Chapter 3.4. Our lunch break came next. After I had finished eating, Horikita called me out into the hallway. This isn't something we should discuss in the classroom. If we talk here, we'll know if anyone comes by, said Horikita.
Okay, so?
This is about the upcoming special exam, isn't it? I asked. Yes, it is. We've been told by Chabashira-sensei that the coming special exam will be quite challenging. It will certainly be an ordeal for students with less academic ability, but for you and me, it will be the ideal setting for our competition, said Horikita. She must have wanted to address personal matters first, because she opened right with that. Horikita and I had promised each other something over spring break. Namely, that we would compete to see who could get the highest score on a written exam in one particular subject. If I won, Horikita would join the student council. If Horikita won, I would, freely and without reservation, employ the skills that I had been hiding over the past year for the sake of the class. We had been advised that it would be difficult for even a student with A-rank academic abilities to score 90 points or higher in one subject on the test. If the difficulty level was that high, it was unlikely we'd both end up getting perfect scores and thus have a tie. I trust you have no issues with that, said Horikita, confirming that I had no objections about settling the matter in the upcoming written test. Of course not. Since there was nothing for me to gain by pointlessly delaying things further, I agreed with her request like it was a matter of course. Glad to hear it. Well, I suppose we can move on to the next topic of discussion right away then. Horikita, satisfied that I had reaffirmed the promise we had made, pulled out her phone. She then launched the OEA app we had just installed that morning. I looked up the number of honors students in the first-year classes who have an academic ability ranking of B or better. There were 17 in Class A, 13 in Class B, 13 in Class C, and 11 in Class D, said Horikita. A total of 54 then. You could say that was a pretty reasonable percentage of students. In our class, there are only 4 students who are ranked E for academic ability. If you include students ranked D, that's a total of 12 people. So, we're in a position where we have more than enough manpower in the first-year classes to cover those students, said Horikita. The question, then, is how many of those honors students we can draw over to us in Class D, I suppose. Even though there were 54 students, it was inevitable there would be a mad scramble to snatch them up. If we dropped the ball, it was possible they'd all be stolen out from under us. Yes. The class that is able to secure many of those 54 students will naturally be in an advantageous position, while the class that partners with a large number of D+ or lower-ranked students will simply be at a disadvantage, said Horikita. That app that was just introduced to us came equipped with some very extremely useful features. The class that used those features well would be most likely to win. Sakayanagiarisu-san, ryuuen-san, and even ichinose-san. I'm sure all of the classes will be making their move starting today, said Horikita. Of the leaders, Class A's Sakayanagi would most likely launch her attack right away. All she had to do was take advantage of the fact that she was in the class with the fewest students who were worried about their level of academic ability, and work hard to bring as many of the smartest first-year students over to their side as possible. Even from the perspective of a first-year student, the stability of Class A was something that could immediately be understood just by looking at the OEA app. If they worked with Class A, they could easily rake in the top-tier rewards. We, on the other hand, didn't have that luxury. First and foremost, we should be prioritizing helping our classmates who are ranked E and D in academic ability to find partners of higher rank, I replied. Horikita nodded lightly in agreement. I wouldn't call it complete or anything, but I've produced a list of people to prioritize finding partners for. I think Suda-kun should be the one we take care of first. Hold on a minute. It's true that Suda's academic ability ranking is E, but do you think that's really what we need to do? I asked. Suda's grades when he first started school here were exceptionally bad, and he'd received an E ranking as a result. However, in the latter half of the first year, we saw his academic performance slowly begin to improve little by little. Meaning it wouldn't be surprising at all if he were actually a little bit better now than he used to be. Yes, I suppose you've got a point. It's true that he's matured quite a bit compared to how he was before. Even during spring break, Suda-kun spent a lot of time wrapped up in his studies, trying to improve areas that he was lagging in before, said Horikita. Were you having study sessions with him? I asked. Absolutely not. I don't have the kind of time to hang around him. Every day? He's learned how to study by himself to a certain extent. I just Drop in and check his progress once every few days and then head back, said Horikita.
Huh.
I thought he was putting in an effort because Horikita was with him. Honestly, that was some really impressive dedication on Suda's part. To be honest, I think Suda-kun's ranking has probably gone up a little bit. I feel like even when compared to other students, he's gone up to D or D+, said Horikita. Of course, that was nothing more than a simple and optimistic estimate. But speaking as someone who knew what Suda was like a year ago, he had definitely matured quite a bit. If I remember correctly, the old Suda used to panic a lot when we heard about special exams and he'd get really upset. He's calmed down a lot, I told her. Then again, he did kick up a fuss about stuff like scoring worse than Kuenji in the societal contribution category. So, even though by your reckoning he's a D or better, you still think he's a higher priority than Ike? I added. His personality and appearance both played a big part in my decision. What he said about the rather heavy-handed attitude he's been taking with the new students in his club also caught my attention, said Horikita. It sounded like she had arrived at her decision not because she was playing favorites with Suda, but because she had properly analyzed the situation. Let's suppose you're a first-year student who doesn't know anything. Who do you think would be easier to team up with, Suda-kun or Ike-kun? Assuming that they have the same exact grades, on the surface, said Horikita. Well, I guess I'd have to say Ike, I replied. Suda's gigantic height, imposing physique, red hair, and stern tone certainly made a frightening first impression. If I had to pair up with someone who had the same academic ranking as him, I would want to pick Ike, thinking he might be easier to deal with. Forget about finding someone with a high level of academic skill, simply finding any partner at all for him might be a challenge, said Horikita. Which was precisely why she had placed him at the top of her list of students to help, I supposed. I understand. If at all possible, I'd like to pair him up with a first-year student who has an academic ability ranking of B or better, I replied. Yes. If we do that, I think he can definitely make it through. I'd like to move quickly. Can you help me? I asked Horikita. Help? I can't really think of any way that I can help though. You can just stick by me and tell me what you think. I just want someone that I can trust by my side, said Horikita. Meaning you trust me? Of those of our classmates who can move around freely, I trust you, she replied. Based on how she phrased that, I wasn't exactly sure if that meant she trusted me a lot or a little. Or are you perhaps worried that you won't be able to beat me if you take even a single minute away from your studies? She asked. That attempt at provocation was actually rather counterproductive. She was just giving me the perfect excuse to get out of helping her by claiming I needed to study in my room because I was apparently nervous. Yeah, I'm very worried. Just when I was about to graciously take advantage of the excuse I'd been given, my phone started to vibrate. There was a public message from the leader of Class 2B, Ichinose Hanami, posted in the OEA app for everyone to read. We just got permission to hold a meet and greet for first and second years in the gym today from 4 to 5 p.m. If you've got time to spare, please stop by. The message was a godsend for the students who were struggling to figure out how to get in touch with the first years. Just as I'd expect from Ichinose-san. Well done. It's just like her to think of everyone, not just her own group, said Horikita. While it was unclear exactly how many people would be attending this meet and greet, I could imagine a fair number of people would be there. It was highly likely that partnerships might be formed right then and there. But rather than joy, I could see a hint of something like frustration on Horikita's face. She might have been thinking of a similar strategy. What's the matter? The special exams only just started, right? Yes, you're right. I suppose that our first order of business has been decided, said Horikita. I guess she meant we were going to be attending the meet and greet after class today. And, before I knew it, I guessed it had been decided that I was helping her. Well, I supposed it wasn't that big a deal if all I was doing was tagging along, but Horikita shot me a look as if she knew what I was thinking and was testing me. All right. I'll go, I told her. Oh my. Are you really going to lend me a hand then? I thought you'd been avoiding me lately, but... Well, you're being quite cooperative, aren't you? Said Horikita. Wow, that was impressive. The person who was aware of the fact I was avoiding her just openly calling me out about it like that. I was just thinking of keeping a close eye on you to see what kind of strategy you come up with, I replied. I see. I might have been a bit hasty in using the word cooperative. Then. Even so, Horikita seemed like she was satisfied with my answer. That answer was just a pretext though. This was a test where I had to put on an act if I was going to survive. There were some things that would be easier for me to deal with if I were working together with Horikita. In that case, you can think of what I'm about to say next as me just talking to myself. While it's true that getting Sudokuin and Ikuin over the threshold to pass this exam is a major prerequisite, this special exam is based on the idea of competing to snatch up the best students. So naturally, we need to pay close attention to what Ryuuen-kun and Sakayanagi-san are doing. Meaning, we need to be mindful of their strategies, said Horikita. Although what she just said was completely obvious, the old Horikita wouldn't have thought this far ahead already. She would probably have only concentrated on making sure Sudo and the other students made it through and neglected to keep track of the enemy's strategy. However, this time around, she was being extremely cautious right from the start. Of course, I don't know exactly what those two are going to do at this current point in time. But I think private points will be a key part of it, said Horikita. Meaning cash. Horikita was saying that at this school, the power of private points spoke for itself. As of right now, there was no connection whatsoever between the first years and the second years. Which meant that the best way to wrap up any negotiation quickly was to use private points. I don't know exactly how much financial muscle Class A and Class C have at their disposal, but if we're competing to recruit students, I'm sure buying people out or bribery will be their go-to strategies, said Horikita. Yeah. Points will be the easiest thing for the new students to understand. It was easy to imagine people paying out a number of points corresponding to how well students could perform academically. However, if all sides carelessly threw wads of cash around to fight this battle, then our stores of private points would be depleted in no time. That was especially true for Class D since we'd been in a financially stagnant situation for the past year. We didn't even need to run an actual comparison to know that our sum of points, or rather, our financial power, fell far short of what the other classes had. Under normal circumstances, we should also invest some money to secure a certain number of students, I added. The only thing that could compete with money was, essentially, money itself. Playing the money game was necessary to see who could offer more. However, the fact that Horikita seemed somewhat frustrated about the message ichinose had posted earlier must have meant. First, let's do some reconnaissance at the meet and greet. If an opportunity presents itself, we might move quickly, but otherwise, I don't intend to rush. That's fine with me, said Horikita. Perhaps she hadn't firmly settled on a plan of action yet, because she didn't go into more detail about her plans. By the way, Ayanokoji-kun. Am I correct in assuming that you can find a partner on your own? She asked. Would you find me one if I asked you? I replied. Speaking objectively, your academic ability is C. So basically, it should be fine no matter who you partner up with. It should be easy enough for me to manage while I'm already dealing with other things, though, said Horikita. Well, if I run into any trouble, I'll come to you. I could rule out any first-year students who decided to partner with Horikita or Yusuke as White Room agents. It wasn't out of the question for me to try asking them at the last minute, before the pairing was finalized, if I could switch in to replace them. However, if my opponent knew everything ahead of time, they would probably take into the account the possibility of me making that choice when I was in trouble. Since all I could do was try to predict their actions and then to outmaneuver them, it was difficult for me to say I had a 100% chance of evading them with that method. More importantly, I was sure the first-year student wouldn't exactly be thrilled about being forced to swap partners after they had already decided to partner up with Horikita or Yusuke. They wouldn't agree to that easily. You'd best not take too long though. It's not like there's nothing for you to be worried about. A 5% penalty for running out of time isn't a small price to pay, said Horikita. Yeah, that's true, I replied. While I wasn't exactly planning to take my time, I was worried about the person from the White Room. I was sure, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that whoever it was had already blended in amongst the first years.